Welcome to your 2024 digital marketing guide for LASIK and refractive surgery practices. Today, we're going to be talking about how to supercharge your procedure volume and dominate your market in 2024. So, we appreciate everyone joining us. Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to be talking about setting clear goals and targets. We're going to cover the three fundamentals for exponential growth. We're going to dive into how to optimize website conversion in 2024. We're going to talk about the trends you need to focus on in the upcoming year. And then we're going to talk about developing your custom action plan for your specific practice. So if you don't mind, I need your attention, please, right? Please turn off your cell phones. Please turn off Facebook. Give me your attention for the next 30 to 45 minutes. And if you're a physician CEO or practice manager and you're serious about getting better results in the upcoming year, these next few minutes will change your life. We've got some good content that we're going to present to you today. So who am I for those that don't know me, and why should you listen to me? My name is Eric Barbour. I'm the founder and CEO of Refractive Surgery Marketing. I'm also the proud alumni of the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University. And I tell you that because I think we bring a different perspective than your standard, digital marketing agency, right? I've spent a lot of time in corporate America, spent a lot of time talking to and working with small business owners, and that's what you need to think of yourself as. Yes, you're a physician. Yes, you may be a practice manager or listen to this, but you're running and oftentimes a multi-million dollar small business. And we like to think that MBA background brings some additional insight to bear. So also, I'm the author of the book, Refractive Surgery Marketing. It's a complete guide from A to Z of how to market your practice from a digital surgery perspective. It's listed on Amazon, but if you'd like a free copy, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to send you a copy. It's a great roadmap and covers a lot of the things that we're going to discuss today. So at the end of the day, this is what we do, right? We specifically work with ophthalmologists that perform refractive surgery. We're not a generalist agency. We spend our time making sure we understand all the pain points that you face in your life running your practice. So a little different than a generalist agency that's doing, they may have an attorney, they may have some doctors, they've got to hit that learning curve every time they have a new client. We bring a specific process to bear, and we find that makes a difference in our customers' lives. So here's what we find in talking to practices across the country. Growing your practice is hard work, right? You always are asking yourself, why is this the case? What are all the things that I should be focusing on, right? And the reason why it's hard is that there's so many different things you can be doing to grow your practice, right? You're unclear where to invest your budget, right? And you're getting calls all the time. Some digital market agency is calling you, the SEO guy is calling you, so forth and so on. So it becomes unclear where you should invest your money on, right? Should you get a new website? Should you invest in social media? Should you focus on SEO? Should you be writing more blog content, right? There's millions and millions of options out there when it comes to internet marketing, digital marketing, to grow your practice. And what we find is, oftentimes you're already making a major investment in your marketing, right? And oftentimes we find that a lot of times you just don't have a lot to show for it, right? The money's going out, but you can't connect that investment that you're making with the results that you're getting or lack thereof. So instead of you looking at an investment, oftentimes you're simply looking at it as an expense, a cost, right? And that's not the way you should be looking at it. You should be looking at it as an investment, but we understand this is a challenge that a lot of you guys face, right? And when you kind of have that cost versus investment mindset and you can't connect your return to the money that's going out the door, oftentimes if you don't have a clear plan of the things that you should be doing, right, you're going to fail, right? You can overspend. You spend too much money on things that are unnecessary, or here's what we find happens a lot of time: you underspend, right? You don't make the types of investments that you should be making in the right types of things. And when you underspend, you often underperform. I'll give you a perfect example of this. At the beginning of this year, if you talk to your financial advisor, for example, everyone was predicting a recession this year, right? So a lot of doctors, a lot of practices They had the mindset of we are going to cut back on our investment in anticipation of this coming recession, right? But again, it's the end of the year. You've probably looked at your portfolio. If you invested in the right things, the market is going through the roof this year, right? And why did it go through the roof? It's because they said the consumer was durable. And in layman's terms, that means consumers had a pocket full of money, right? They kept purchasing things, they kept doing things, and kept spending, and it drove the economy. Even though we were in a situation where we had high interest rates and a rising interest rate environment, and the thought was that we were going to have a recession, that clearly didn't happen. Well, here's what happened: those practices that cut back, that reduced the amount of money that they were spending or investing in their marketing, in their practice, they lost out because the practices that were forward thinking, the practices that kept investing in growth, they took market share away from the practices that cut back, right? So again, at the end of the day, and this is not financial advice or anything like that, but you've got to have a long-term view of the things that you should be doing, and you have to have a plan. Overspending can be a problem because oftentimes when you overspend, it's because you're spending on the wrong things. But underspending is a huge problem as well because it causes you to underperform, no doubt about it. Right? Again, the good news is this presents an opportunity, right? When you have a clear plan with clear goals, targets, and KPIs in place, right? It helps you to know where you're going, right? It helps you to attract new patients. I just kind of talked about what happened this year with a lot of practices that cut back, right? Maybe they missed the boat on certain patients. Practices that kept the pedal to the metal, right? They grew, right? They took advantage of the situation and they grew when other practices were being overly conservative, right? And when you do this, when you've got a great plan in place, it's going to allow you to generate maximum return on your investment, maximum return, right? And ultimately, this leads to success. And what that means when we talk about maximum return on your investment, you're maximizing patient flow with the right kind of patients. That's key. That's critical. And you're hitting your revenue targets. That's going to allow your practice to succeed in the long run. So let's talk about setting clear goals for 2024, right? I read a lot of books, a lot of different things, right? And there's an author, Brian Tracy. He's written a lot of motivational books, a lot of books on success and personal development. And one of his key messages is that success is goals. One of the key quotes that he talks about all the time: success is goals. All else is commentary. In other words, you've got to have goals in place to know where you're going, right? And here's kind of an example of what that looks like, right? Here's a sailboat calmly on the ocean, right? But it's got no wind on its sails, right? You can kind of see the ocean is pretty calm. In other words, the direction of the currents is taking the boat where the currents are going, not necessarily where the captain of the ship wants to go. However, when you have clear goals, it's like wind in your sails, right? You can harness the power of the winds, right? And you can navigate and decide where it is that you want to go, right? So you've got to have clear goals in place in order to make sure you achieve your targets at the end of the year. Here's more examples of this, right? In an old Harvard study, they surveyed the graduates in a 1979 class at Harvard, right? These are obviously some pretty talented individuals, right? 84% of that class of 1979 had no specific goals in place, right? This was the group where, hey, they figured their talent was going to take them somewhere. 84% had no specific goals. 13% had goals, but they didn't write the goals down. 3% had clear written goals and a plan to accomplish them. Here's their results. The 13% of the graduates who had goals were earning on average twice as much as the 84% who didn't. Right? That's pretty powerful. The 13% who had goals were earning twice as much as the 84% who didn't. But get this, the 3% of graduates who had clear written goals were earning on average 10 times as much as the other 97% put together. So that's the category you want to be in, right? The top 3%, clear written goals and a plan in place to get you there, right? You're earning 10 times as much as the other 97% put together. That's pretty powerful stuff, right? So at the end of the day, you need to have clear written goals and plans. And then you want to work backwards from those plans, right? And we tend to, as humans, we tend to kind of set 1 year goals, but you want to also break that down into quarterly goals, then further break that down in monthly goals. And that way you've got checkpoints, right? And you can see how you're, excuse me, you can see how you're doing and see how you're, as it relates to your goals. And then you can make adjustments along the way and continue to fine tune. Right. So what are your 2024 goals, right? What is your revenue target? How much does that break down monthly? And we're going to walk you through an example of this. What's your average transaction value? And I know, we've got people across the country listening to this, but the Market Scope 2020 report said on average, refractive surgery is 2632 per eye in the United States. Let's just say $5,000 for rounding purposes, right? And then in order for you to say, what are your 2024 goals? You then need to break that down into how many procedures will it require for you to do that. And so you take your monthly revenue target and divide that by your average transaction value. So let's look at an example. Let's say you had a 2024 revenue target of 1.5 million in refractive revenue. If we broke that down monthly, that's 125,000. We're being conservative here. Again, the Market Scope 2020 report says 2632 per eye. We were even more conservative. We said $4,000 was your average transaction value. So how many procedures will that require per month? It will require just over 31, let's just say 31 procedures per month. This is how you break things down and know if you're on track. Then you can figure out, well, if I need that many procedures, how many leads do I need? How many prospects do I need in order to get that? And let's say your average conversion rate is 35%. If we divide procedures by the conversion rate, that's going to tell us how many leads per month we need, right? So we said 31.25 procedures. Our conversion rate is 35%. So we take 31.25, divide that by the 0.35. So basically we need about 90 leads per month in order for us to hit that target. And it may ebb and flow a little bit, right? You may have some seasonality throughout your year, but this kind of gives you a roadmap to follow so you can back into how many prospects do you need coming through your pipeline every month in order for you to hit your revenue goal. So what is your goal, right? How many leads do you need to get there? We're just giving you a hypothetical example. Some of you are much bigger practices. Some of you are smaller practices, but at least we've given you kind of a roadmap to follow. But again, remember what the Harvard study said. You don't just need goals, you need a plan to get there. So I want to give you this quote again from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a fantastic book, actually. I encourage everyone to read it. It's great from a business owner perspective, but it's also a great book to read from developing your own habits. It's something that you can live by, and actually something good to teach your kids as well. But this is the major quote from the book. Again, this is from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. He says, "We do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems." We do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. So, in other words, we've got to have goals, but we've got to have a system in place to help us achieve those goals, right? This is another book we're going to talk about. And the system that we use, the system that we help our clients with, it comes from, a concept from the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's a book that came out years ago. One of the books that I read shortly after getting my MBA, and I'm maybe older than a couple of you. It's a fantastic book. And one of the concepts that he covers in the book, he calls it the flywheel effect, right? And the flywheel is, think about here's a picture, an example of it, but think about a huge, heavy flywheel, right? Think of it's like a gear, right? And it's a massive metal disc mounted horizontally on an axle. It's about 30 feet in diameter, 2 feet thick, and it weighs about 5,000 pounds, right? This is how Mr. Collins explains it in the book. And he says, now imagine your task is to get the flywheel rotating on its axle as fast and as long as possible. So the way you do that, he says, push with great effort. You start to move the flywheel. It starts to move an inch forward, and it's moving, right? But you can't even tell it's moving, right? You keep pushing, and after 2, 3, 4 hours of persistent effort, you get the flywheel to complete one complete turn, right? It seems like it's taking you forever to get this thing to move because it's big, it's heavy, right? And you can't kind of see the end of this thing moving because it's moving imperceptibly, right? But you keep pushing, the flywheel begins to spin faster and faster, and with continued effort, you move it around a second rotation. You keep pushing in a consistent direction, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns, and then all of a sudden, the flywheel gains momentum and it builds momentum and it has a breakthrough because it's so large, it's so heavy. The momentum of the flywheel kicks in, right? And the flywheel begins kind of spinning on its own. Its own heavy weight is working for you. The last push that you pushed on the flywheel to get it moving was no different from the first push, but the flywheel now is going faster and faster, and each turn of the flywheel builds on itself, right? It's spinning now 1,000 times faster with that same small push than the first push you gave it when it seemed like it wasn't moving at all, right? So bottom line is, small steps along the way contribute to huge outcomes at the end of the day, right? Hey, that's a nice little quote. That rhymed. I like that, right? So again, the concept of flywheel from good to great, this is present in many different businesses. Well, we've got a concept that we use to help our clients. We call it the practice growth flywheel, right? And the center of this graphic really describes the three fundamental levers that we're going to talk about in depth, right? But you got the same concept. Your small, imperceptible turns of the flywheel begin to generate unstoppable momentum along the way, right? And the three key metrics are attracting the right kind of prospects to your practice, right? You want to book high quality and larger percentages of those prospects into actual consultations and surgeries. And then you want to optimize your results, right? So that you're maximizing your ROI. And when you get this right, and you'll see the outer ring of the flywheel, strangers will come visit your practice, come visit your website. They'll turn into prospects, they'll turn into patients. Patients then become promoters who tell their friends, they leave you great reviews. And the outside ring of the flywheel contributes to more strangers coming to your practice, more of those strangers converting into prospects, so forth, and so on. So let's really talk about those three key levers on the inside of the flywheel, right? The three key levers you need to pull for exponential growth in your practice, right? And the first piece of the puzzle is, then make sure we copy each one of these or talk about each one of these. The three key levers, again, were attracting more prospects, converting more of those prospects into patients, and driving more profits, right? So attract more prospects, convert more patients, and drive more profits, right? So let's look at the first of this, attracting more prospects, right? And there's really, there's three key ways that you attract more prospects in digital marketing. And we're kind of approaching this at a high level. We're going to have more workshops throughout the year that does a deep dive on each one of these. But there's really three key levers that you pull when it comes to attracting more prospects, right? You've got organic leads, and think about the organic results of a typical search engine results page in Google. That's the Google Maps results. And those are the organic search results under those Google Map results, right? So that's all generated by SEO, local SEO. There's paid leads, right? Or maybe we should call it paid advertising, right? That's Google PPC. You've probably done Google pay-per-click, or someone may have discussed, advertising via Google paid ads before, but you can drive leads almost instantaneously with, a great paid advertising strategy. And then there's also some paid social media advertising strategies that you can do as well. But that's another way to generate prospects. And this is something that we find that a lot of people don't tap into. It's their own database, right? You've got patients that maybe you've seen before, maybe they're good candidates for refractive surgery. Maybe they're people who came to see you for a consult and left, and you don't talk to them again. Or maybe you talk to them once or twice and you leave it alone, right? Well, if they were interested in refractive surgery before, they either left you and went to someone else to get that procedure done, or maybe they just decided it wasn't the right time. And often you're sitting on a pot of gold when it comes to your database of existing patients, right? So those are the three things that we feel you should be tapping into as it relates to attracting more prospects. right? That's the first lever. The second lever is you've got to convert more of those prospects into patients, right? And website conversion is something that we find that a lot of practices, they have a website that looks great. It talks about them, the physician. It puts their practice in a good spotlight. It looks like an attractive place to go. But at the end of the day, does it convert traffic? Does it convert strangers into prospects? And does it help you convert those prospects into patients, right? And once you pull on that lever, and there's a couple of things, and again, we'll talk about these in more detail in a different workshop. We're going to approach these from a high level today. But something that you need to focus on is making sure your website conversion is where it needs to be. There's a lot of simple things that you can do on your website. The last bullet point on here, automation, marketing automation, right, is we know most of you guys are busy. Your front desk is busy. Do you follow up with all of your leads in 30 seconds or less, right after they've made an inquiry on your website? And how many times do you follow up with them right after they've made an inquiry, right? We find on average, we call it speed to lead. You need to follow up with in 30 seconds or less, and you can automate this with text, with an automatic phone call back, or with chat on your website. But you also need to follow up with them, right? And we find that clients prefer to be followed up with via text message, right? And again, you can automate a lot of this because we know your front desk is busy, right? We know that you may not get to follow up with them the amount of times that you're thinking of follow up with them. And think about it. What happens if somebody makes an inquiry in the middle of the night, right? Wouldn't it be great if there's an automatic way to follow up with them? And a lot of this can be powered by AI. But again, this is something that we'll dive into deeper later on. That's another thing to help you convert more patients, and also making sure your reputation is what it needs to be. Right? There's study after study that talks about the importance of having great online reviews and how people view you online, because no matter how someone comes into your orbit, whether it's a referral from a friend, they're going to go to your website, they're going to check you out, they're going to read your reviews because they want to see who you are. If there's a review on there on your profile, and most people go to Google when looking for reviews, if there's a negative review on your profile, that's going to give them pause, right? If there's some older reviews or you don't have recent reviews, that's going to give them pause as well. And I'll share a quick story with you. I was out to dinner with two docs last week, and we were, hey, what do you do? This type of thing and that type of thing. And they weren't refractive surgeons. They were, in fact, OBGYNs. But anyway, just talked to a lot of doctors, and we were out at dinner. And the doctor told me some of his struggles. He asked me what I would do and how I would approach it. And I asked him, well, tell me, how are you approaching things? How are you approaching your digital marketing? And he told me he had a provider. And I said, well, what did they do for you? He said, they manage my website. And I said, well, what does managing your website mean? What does that mean? What do they do for you? And he was like, I don't know. They keep it up and running. Right. And I asked him, well, how much are you paying for that? And he told me. And I said, well, do you feel like you're getting a return on your investment? And he said, well, I'll pay anything. I just need to see the results. I said, okay, that seems like a fair way to look at things. Right. And I said, well, it sounds like you're pretty happy then. And he said, well, no. And then he told me about a situation. He had a a patient that he was advising, and she didn't do all the things that he advised her to do, or she took some time between the appointments. And so she wasn't having the best outcomes because she wasn't following all of his advice. But he was really concerned about this patient. And so they went above and beyond. He specifically made a phone call to the patient. The practice manager made a phone call to the patient. And so they walked her through the process to make sure that she was going to have the right outcome. The disconnect came when she got her bill, right? And so she was upset because she didn't feel that the bill represented the services that she had. And so this is what the physician told me. He said, well, and ultimately what happened is when she got the bill, she went out and left this particular practice a negative review. And so he said, well, she didn't leave me a negative review. She left my practice manager a negative review. And I said, I said, so let me ask you this. On your online profile, does it say anything? And he's a solo practitioner. I said, on your online profile, whose name's up there? Your name or the practice manager's name? And he said, yeah, I kind of see what you mean. I said, yeah, it doesn't matter. Everybody that's on your team, if somehow the process breaks down and they don't feel that they've received a great outcome at some touch point, it's your practice that received a negative review. And he said, well, Eric, how do I get positive reviews, right? I don't know how to affect that. And so anyway, long story short, we're helping him with some stuff, as it relates to making sure his reviews are his process around managing outcomes, managing patient perception of his practice. And I told him, here's some things that you should be talking with your team about. But long story short, managing your reputation is important because it's going to impact future patients that come down the line. So it's something critical in terms of helping you convert more patients. Finally, the third lever that you need to pull is, focusing on driving more profits. Again, we talked about earlier having a clear plan. One of the things, some practices look at things like, what is our total cost, right? And they don't feel like they're getting the outcomes that they should be because they feel like they're overspending. And there's a lot of practices as well that they're underspending and underperforming. So you want to make sure that you're looking at your total spend, right? Making sure you're investing in the right things. You want to be breaking down things like your average cost per lead, right? Your average cost per patient. And ultimately, that's going to allow you to look at your return on investment. And what I mean by return on investment, you can look at it like every dollar, with the right data, you can tell this. Every dollar I invest in my market, I'm getting this type of return on the back end. So if I put $1 in, I'm getting $7, $8 out on the back end, right? And if once you can conceptualize that and understand that, the amount that you're investing in your marketing, you don't think about it as a cost anymore. You think about it as your total return, just like you do with your investment portfolio. If I invest this amount of money per month in my 401k, right, I'm going to get this type of return on the back end. That's how you need to be looking at your marketing investments. And with the right kind of data, if you have data-driven marketing, right, we can help you figure out, or you can look at the things that you're doing and figure out how to drive more profits. What are the things that are giving me the best return? I need to double down on those things. What are the things that are not maybe giving me the return that I want to have? And either you fine tune those things, or maybe you get rid of them and you try some other things, right? But anyway, those three key levers: attracting more prospects, converting more of those prospects into patients, and then driving more profits, extracting more out of every person that comes through the door, right? Again, at the end of the day, when you have the right system in place, it leads to success, right? So kind of deep dive there, right? But let's talk about the biggest challenge facing your practice, right? This is one of the things that we see over and over again. This kind of relates to the story I told you about with the doc that I met, right? The biggest challenge that we see is that oftentimes 50 to 60% of inbound leads leave your website unconverted. Again, think about it in the middle of the night. Somebody fills out a form, no one's calling them back because obviously you're not there, your team's not there, right? And also 90% of web forms fail to convert. It's almost as if you think of it like this, right? Think of it as a leaky bucket, right? You're pouring water in, you're investing in paid ads to get people to come to your practice. You're investing in SEO to make sure you show up in the right place. You want to make sure that you're pouring as much water into the top of the funnel, or in this case, in the top of the bucket as humanly possible, right? And you're getting the most out of it. You don't want the water to be leaking out at the end, out of the, the bottom of the bucket. You want to make sure you're converting a higher portion of those leads into actual patients or people at least that you have a chance to talk to, right? And again, we sort of touched on this earlier, but leads that are not followed up with within the first 5 minutes go cold, right? And think about that. 5 minutes is not a long period of time, right? We like to even shorten that time frame, and we like to automate that process. And again, the average person must be followed up with 5 to 7 times before booking an appointment or a consultation with you. And when I say followed up with 5, 7 times, that doesn't mean a phone call and and they don't answer, that means they need to be touched 5 to 7 times. That means a text message went out to them and they read the text message. A follow-up email went out to them and they read the email. A phone call was placed to them and they answered the phone or listened to the voicemail. Because, if you follow up with them and it doesn't touch them, it's like you never followed up in the first place. So it really requires more touch points than just 5 to 7 in order for you to follow up with them 5 to 7 times. And let's be honest, how often is your front desk calling every client? How many times are they texting texting them to remind them of their appointment, or to get them to come in to book an appointment? And be honest with yourself. Do they have the time? Are they really, following these metrics, following up with all leads within the first 5 minutes? And are you touching those leads 5 to 7 times, each and every one of your leads? Ask yourself, what percentage of your leads are you doing that to, right? And again, consumers prefer to interact via text message versus phone or email. So do you have those systems in place? And a lot of practices don't. But here's a solution. Here's what you need to make sure you have in place. You need to leverage marketing automation to follow up with all your web forms. And again, we say, we would like to get it down to 30 seconds or within that first minute. Follow up with them with a return phone call, return email, return text message. And there's ways to do this that makes it generic. Hey, we just saw you visited our website. Unfortunately, we weren't able to answer your call, or we'd love to get you in for a consultation. Is there anything I can help you with? Right. And you can automate that, right? That's a generic message, not that actually someone else is picking up the phone or someone in your team is doing it, but you can have 3 messages, go out almost immediately. So you can kind of try to hit them from all angles, right? And you want to automate the follow-up, like we said, so that every prospect is touched 5+ times, and then they're able to engage with you via text. And this is kind of a busy screen. This kind of describes our process, and we've got a tool in place that helps you with this. And again, no matter how someone comes to you, whether it's someone comes to you from a paid ad on Google, someone visits your website and clicks to call you, or they fill out a web form, or they go through one of your LASIK tests or anything like that, and you capture their contact information. There's a lot of things that need to happen behind the scene so that you follow up with them. But without going into detail on this and taking you down the weeds, and again, we'll have another workshop on this later in the year, or later, it's the end of 2023 right now. We'll do this sometime in early 2024. But suffice it to say, you need to have all the things in place so that you automate the process. They get phone calls, they get text messages, they get emails, and it doesn't require any effort on your staff. It's all automated, and it keeps following up with them until they say no, right? And we do it in a way so that's not obtrusive. It's HIPAA compliant. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you follow up with each and every lead 5 to 7 times. You want to do it quickly. And here's an example of what this could mean for you when you do it right, right? And let's say, in our earlier example, we used that hypothetical practice and we said they needed, I think it was 90 leads. Here's an example of a practice and they've got 100 leads, right? We want to make this easy math. Let's say your conversion rate is 30% with no follow-up, right? That means you get 30 book surgeries out of 100 leads. Again, we took our $4,000 average fee and we multiplied that by 30 surgeries and we came up with $120,000 in monthly revenue, right? Now, let's say, and this is oftentimes the results are much greater than this, but let's say we automated the follow-up and we simply took your conversion rate from 30% to 40%, right? We still got the same 100 leads, but now instead of converting 30% of those leads into surgeries, we convert at a 40% rate. So now we've got 40 book surgeries, same amount of leads, higher conversion rates, 10 more surgeries per month, right? Our average fee hasn't changed. It's still $4,000, but instead of making, generating $120,000 off of our procedure volume the previous month, we've now generated $160,000. That's $40,000 more off the same number of leads per month, right? And at the end of the day, this makes every lead you generate more valuable. You're spending no more money to get to get those same leads, but you're getting a bigger return out of the back end, right? This is huge. Every practice needs to have this in place because oftentimes it's just difficult for, humans or your team to do this on a consistent basis. But when you have the right systems, the right tools in place, you can make sure that this is always happening in the background and you can generate more leads and more patients and more revenue like clockwork, right? All right. We've talked about developing your goals. We've talked about putting systems in place to help you achieve those goals. The next thing that you need to have in place is your mission, right? You've got the inputs, right? And your mission statement is the thing you use to mobilize your team toward a common goal. It's the thing you use to clarify your mission, right? So we already know, how many leads we need to generate over the year. We talked about how much revenue. We talked about the systems in place. So you need to back that up with a mission statement so that you and your team can internalize this, right? Because it doesn't do you any good to have beginning of the year planning, right? And you never really revisit this and you don't use it as your guiding mission every week, every month. So let's talk about how to put your mission statement together, right? The first thing you want to do is list 3 clear economic objectives. And we're going to go through an example of this, what this should look like. You're going to have a specific deadline and you want to have a reason why the mission is important to you. So here's an example. We will generate 50 new patients monthly. We will achieve an overall review rating above 4.5. We'll capture 200,000 in refractive revenue each month over the next 12 months. And here's your why, because we believe everyone deserves perfect vision, right? And we're not saying this is just giving an example. We got 3 economic objectives. We want to generate 50 new patients a month. We want to achieve an overall review rating above 4.5. We want to capture 200,000 in refractive revenue each month. It's got your deadline over the next 12 months. And then it's got your why. And this is going to be different for everyone, because we believe everyone deserves perfect vision. And your why could be different. You may want to bring another physician on. You may want to grow your practice. It may be because you're trying to grow your practice to a certain level so that you can sell it. Who knows, right? But here's the way you go about developing your mission statement. 3 economic objectives that you want to achieve. You want to have a specific deadline. You want to achieve these objectives over. And then you need to have your why. Why are achieving these objectives important, right? So we've got our goals. We've got our systems in place. Now we've got a mission statement that can help us really move our culture towards achieving the things we want to achieve in 2024. All right, let's talk about a couple of key trends, and we're going to wrap this up. A couple of key trends that you want to be focused on for the next year, right? When it comes to marketing your practice, you want to develop omnipresence and authority in your market. Anytime someone thinks about an ophthalmologist, anytime someone thinks about, cataract surgery, LASIK, refractive surgery, you want them thinking about you, right? You want to become the most omnipresent practice in your market. At least that's how you should be thinking. And in order to do that, you got to have an all-in perspective. It's not, hey, let me just do some SEO. Hey, let me do a little bit of PPC. Maybe, hey, let me, focus a little on social media. You really want to focus on everything in the digital marketing perspective. And we've given you kind of the model to think about the practice growth flywheel. You want to be pulling on all those levers of growth in order to dominate the Google search results, right? Because that's where patients go when they're thinking of refractive surgery. The first place they go is Google. So you want to dominate the Google PPC results on the top of the page. You want to dominate and be listed near the top of the Google Maps results, right? And you also want to dominate and be listed at the top or very near the top of the organic listings below the Google Maps results, right? Again, you want to own Google so that you can own your market. One of the ways you do that, another kind of key trend is that content is king, right? You want to have blog posts. You want to have video, and more video. I mean, think about your social media behavior. What is it that you do? Whether you're on Facebook, the things that stop you from scrolling. It's either a picture that grabs your attention or it's a video. And think about, things like YouTube, right? And that's pure video content. Think about Instagram, TikTok, that's nothing but short form video. So you need to have video, video, and more video. And again, we're going to talk about how to achieve this in a different workshop later this year. And then final thing is that everyone is talking about artificial intelligence. It's really impacting our world, right? So you want to leverage AI to assist in content creation, right? Everybody's heard of Chat GPT. And if we look at what's going on in the stock market these days, a lot of the companies that are being fueled, or a lot of the tech companies that are achieving exceptional results, are doing that because of AI. So you want to leverage AI to assist in how to create content for your practice so that you can post them on all your web properties, right? And again, we're going to do a deep dive into each of these later in this year. But to recap, develop omnipresence and authority in your market. You got to have an all-in perspective when it comes to doing digital marketing. Video, video, and more video as it relates to content, and leveraging AI to assist in content creation. So again, here's what we've covered today, right? We're going to summarize this. We've developed clear goals and targets. We talked about the three fundamentals of exponential growth, right? You got to focus on attracting more prospects. You got to convert more of those prospects into patients, and you got to make sure you're driving maximum ROI from each of those patients, right? We talked about the big picture of what marketing channels to tap into. We talked about how to optimize your website for conversion. We talked about the biggest challenge facing your practice, right? That's unconverted leads. The way you solve for that is making sure you had marketing automation in place. And then we talked about the key trends you should be focusing on in 2024. So here's the bottom line. We find, again, I'm a big student of the game, and here's a great quote from Tony Robinson. People who succeed at the highest level are doing something differently than everyone else does. And he goes on to say, go figure out what someone else who was successful did and model it. So we've kind of walked through our model, right, that we use to help practices grow. And we know this model works, right? So it's your choice, right? You could take the easy way, follow a proven model, follow the path that Tony Robbins says, right? Or you could take the hard way. You go try to keep experimenting, figuring all of this out on your own. But again, we think we've cracked the code in how to grow your practice. We've developed a system called the Practice Growth Flywheel that'll help you achieve your goals. And so we've given you the formula, right? And the end result, when you get all of this stuff right, is that, you can feel like, or ask yourself this, what if your marketing was on autopilot, right? You didn't have to spend time searching all over, trying to figure out all this stuff. Your team wasn't searching, Googling, hey, will this work? Will that work, right? What if you had a constant flow of new patients, right? The right kind of patients, that they can afford your surgery, they want to see you, and they're the types of patients you like dealing with, right? When this happens, you have a new patient pipeline, and you can achieve those revenue targets that we talked about, that we broke down in the process of how to back into your number and how to build your mission statement around them. Excuse me. Right. So we've given you all the information on how to achieve your goals, right? But at the end of the day, knowing is not enough. You've got to take action, right? Again, it's the beginning of the year, or it's the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. A lot of people will go through this planning process, but what good is a plan if it's just sitting on a shelf, right? At the end of the day, we're going to, our task or our challenge to you is implement these concepts in your practice, right? If you've got the ability to do it on your own, we've given you everything that you need to do in order for you to develop the revenue targets that you want to develop. And we've also given you the information on how to achieve those revenue targets. So implement these concepts in your practice. You'll have huge outcomes at the end of the year if you do. But at the end of the day, if you need help with any of this, please reach out to us directly. We do this on a daily basis for practices around the country. Reach out to us. We'd love to schedule a time to talk. I've left the link down here on the screen of how to book some time on our calendar. I'm going to put it in the show notes as well. And you can just click on the link. It'll take you directly to our calendar, and you can book some time. But that's it for today. We hope you enjoy the rest of the holiday season. We look forward to speaking with you at the beginning of the year. And again, if you need some help, reach out to us directly. We'd love to spend some time getting to know one another and see if there's a good fit to work together. That's it for today. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate it. Talk to you soon.